Hello, my name is Maegan Woytek, and I'm a therapist here at Hope for the Journey in Texas. And I wanted to come on here and go into more detail about EMDR, or eye movement desensitization and reprocessing, because when I give my clients a little crash course on EMDR before we use it in session, it's usually just a quick 2 or 3 minute spiel to just clear up some of what they've heard in the wild. So it's easy to Google EMDR and see that it's so multi-talented and one of the frontline treatments for PTSD and other diagnoses like anxiety and depressive disorders and self-esteem issues and phobias and eating disorders and relationship issues and dissociative disorders, and the list goes on. And clients also see results much faster with EMDR than they do with other modalities and with just good old talk therapy, although talk therapy is wonderful too. So if you want to hang around, I'll be talking about what even is EMDR and how it works, and then what you can expect if you decide to seek out an EMDR therapist for yourself. So let's talk about it. Okay, so before I can even tell you what EMDR is, let's understand how our brains and bodies handle difficult things that happen to us. Because at the foundation of EMDR is the idea that just like the body can heal itself for the most part without any outside intervention, the brain and the nervous system can too, right? But sometimes the body can't heal itself because something blocks that process, like repeated trauma to an injury or a really big injury, or if some kind of foreign object finds its way into a wound, which just leads to an infection, and then some kind of antibiotic or something is required to treat that infection before the natural healing process can take over. The same thing happens in the brain and in the nervous system if we experience something overwhelming or traumatic that infects or overwhelms the system's natural healing process. So when the system is overwhelmed, that original experience and the corresponding images and body sensations and thoughts and sounds and beliefs and other related material gets stuck. And so now we have some real yucky stuff just festering in there, which leads to trauma symptoms like flashbacks and nightmares and panic attacks and hypervigilance and dissociation. And so everything is just stuck in this raw, unprocessed, disorganized form, and the brain can't file it away and store it correctly, and then the nervous system can't metabolize it or digest it. So it is literally just stuck, which makes it feel like the original experience is still happening, or like it just happened, even if it actually happened years ago. So now, here we are. Everything is trapped. The natural healing process is blocked. So we can't even apply new learnings or new information to this yucky experience, or access old, positive, and helpful information either. So you can read all the self-help books and be in years of talk therapy and logically know that the overwhelming traumatic experiences aren't your fault and that everything is over and you're safe now, but you won't be able to apply all that new positive adaptive logic to that old negative, overwhelming, or traumatic experience because it's just blocked off. It's in a different part of your brain. You just can't connect those things. So that's why talk therapy can't always get you unstuck. And this is where EMDR comes in. So, TLDR, the brain and the nervous system can and do process through all types of experiences all the time, all by themselves, but sometimes that process gets blocked, especially if an experience is overwhelming or traumatic. So if we can just remove the block and allow the infected memory or experience to connect to all the adaptive, functional, healing information that we already have or that we can learn, the system can finally process that experience and we can heal. So that was a lot, and what does that even mean? So let's look at a more concrete example and say that we have Jane. And to avoid making this too extreme and traumatic, let's just say that when Jane was 6 years old, she fell off her bike. So she's fine, but she did skin her knees and hit her head and bent one of the wheels on her bike. And when she limped home, holding back tears and really just needing comfort and help and gentleness from her parents, it was really hard for her when she got home, and instead her mom was kind of pissed that she had ripped her jeans and gotten blood all over her new shirt, and dad was mad that she had damaged her bike from riding down the hill that her parents had told her to stay away from. So Jane felt a lot of shame and like she had done something wrong, and it felt like her parents were more upset with her than they were concerned for her. And by the time Jane's parents had calmed down, Jane had already cleaned and bandaged her knees and her head all by herself. And that night, her parents decided that Jane would have to do some extra chores to earn money to have her bike repaired and to replace the clothes that she'd ruined. So everything was fine, nothing horrible happened. But as Jane got older and went through her school years and into college and got into relationships and went into the workforce, she just always had a really hard time asking for help. And for some reason, asking for help just made her feel really ashamed and like she was going to be in trouble and like she was just doing something wrong. Logically, she knew that nothing bad was going to happen if she asked for help, but something just felt unsettling and distressing about it. And then, of course, not being able to ask for help led to other negative things in Jane's life, like her grades suffered because when she didn't understand something in school, she wasn't able to ask her teacher for help in understanding it. And she was unhappy in relationships because she felt like her needs were being neglected and her partners couldn't read her mind, of course, and she wasn't able to tell them what she needed. So obviously something's going on here, right? It's not like Jane had never had positive experiences asking for help. There were hundreds of times in her childhood when mom and dad were responsive to her needs, and when other adults and peers were responsive and non-judgmental to her needs, and when other people now were attentive to her needs. But if we remember how overwhelming experiences can become stuck and blocked off from that adaptive information, it's easier to understand why this issue just keeps popping up in Jane's life. So if you can relate to Jane and there's just been this persistent issue or this area of life where you've felt stuck and or something overwhelming or traumatic has happened to you, EMDR can be really helpful in kickstarting your brain's natural healing process by removing whatever block has kept that from happening on its own. So for Jane, that block might be the belief that if she asks for help, not only will she not get help, but she'll be shamed and in trouble. And for someone who has experienced a sexual trauma, not only will the physical trauma be trapped in their bodies, but they may also believe that they're not safe or that they're damaged. And imagine what other aspects of someone's life would be affected when those are the lenses that they're seeing the world through. Okay, so how exactly are we removing these blocks from your brain? That's weird. We're doing something called bilateral stimulation or dual attention stimulation, BLS or DAS, which are basically fancy ways of saying consistent back and forth across the body movement. And we use this movement because it's similar to the way our eyes move during our rapid eye movement or dream phase of sleep, where the left and right hemispheres of our brains are activated and actively processing information. So something about either moving your eyes back and forth or tapping your body back and forth or hearing tones or music back and forth gets the attention of both sides of your brain and kickstarts processing. So I'm going to simplify this here, but Once we can get your brain paying attention to a specific memory network, we can create new pathways or connections to adaptive information so that the original traumatic, overwhelming memory isn't blocked off and stuck anymore. And once it's unstuck, it can finally be processed correctly and stored correctly so that it doesn't keep getting triggered so easily and it doesn't feel so recent and real. So if Jane were to be super brave and seek out EMDR therapy, or if you were to be super brave and seek out EMDR therapy, let's talk about some of the things that you could expect. So EMDR is a phase-based type of treatment. So while each therapist's methods of moving their clients through EMDR might be different, their overall framework should be the same. So once Jane's therapist has built a little bit of rapport with Jane and has enough information about her background and has thoroughly assessed her to make sure she's appropriate for EMDR, or that EMDR is appropriate for her, the therapist is going to help Jane decide which type of BLS or DAS feels the best. So remember, BLS, DAS activates both hemispheres of your brain to get the natural healing process started, and it also helps you to stay grounded in the here and now while also activating whatever infected, blocked memory network is back in the there and then. So that's one of the tricky things about EMDR, is almost being in two places at once. So Jane is, of course, going to have to stay grounded and present in her therapist's office or wherever she's doing her session, while also bringing up that incident from when she was 6 in order to guide her brain and give it a starting place to initiate healing. Now, obviously, Jane probably didn't go into therapy knowing exactly what experience it was that led to her feeling shameful asking for help. So there's a whole process for narrowing that down with her therapist. But once she and her therapist get down to the original experience or the touchstone memory, her therapist will help her identify the following 7 things to light up that infected memory network. So Jane and her therapist will identify an image that goes along with the target, and the target in this case is not being able to ask for help. They'll identify a negative belief that Jane has about herself now that corresponds with the image, the positive belief that Jane would like to have about herself, how true that positive belief feels when paired with the image on a 1 to 7 scale, where 1 is completely false and 7 is completely true. The emotions that come up now when combining the image and the negative belief, how disturbing the memory feels now on a 0 to 10 scale, where 0 is no disturbance at all or neutral, and then where 10 is overwhelming disturbance or the worst disturbance you can imagine. And then a body scan, in which Jane scans her body from head to toe and notices where that distress or disturbance shows up. Now, with this information, Jane's therapist is going to ask her to hold the picture of mom and dad's angry faces together with the words "I'm shameful" and the sensations in her body. And then Jane is going to start her BLS, whichever one she chose, and then just notice. So with EMDR, the brain does all the work and you just have to notice, which is sometimes easier said than done, because sometimes we want to try and make things happen and we want to do it right. But with EMDR, there is no right or supposed to. There's just letting whatever happens happen. And just noticing can be a really weird experience because there's an endless list of things that you can notice when you start EMDR. You can notice body sensations, you can notice emotions, you can notice thoughts, you can notice different memories or different ways of thinking about those memories. You can notice seemingly unrelated things. You can notice nothing at all. So it can be hard to overcome those
those thoughts of, am I doing this right? This can't be right. I don't feel anything super significant happening. But sometimes it can be helpful to just imagine that you are sitting on a bus or a train, or that you're, just watching a movie, and imagine that whatever is going on in your brain is the scenery or is being projected onto the screen. And you are just noticing the scenery passing by or whatever is coming up on the screen. You can't control what's passing by. You can't control what's being projected. You can just notice and tell your therapist. So you will do several sets of BLS, taking breaks in between so that you can report to your therapist what you've noticed. And once you're able to get your scales to a 7 and a 0, meaning that you 100% believe your positive cognition. So in Jane's case, that would be that her needs do matter. And then 0, meaning that you have no disturbance when you bring up that original memory. Then your therapist will help you clear out any lingering present day symptoms or triggers, and then even situations that might come up in the future. So EMDR takes care of the past, the present, and the future. So how do we target something that hasn't even happened yet? So if you've imagined something and have feelings and beliefs about it, your brain has a network for it. And if an imagined event already has maladaptive, fearful, negative meaning attached to it, then that leaves us plenty of room to desensitize and process it the way we did the touchstone memory or the original experience. So we can preemptively weave new adaptive learnings into a future situation instead of thinking about the future through the lens of the original negative cognition, like I am shameful. So after completing EMDR or clearing a target, clients describe feeling like the memory or experience that they unblocked no longer holds so much significance and doesn't feel so front and center anymore. Once the brain and nervous system can fully process through an experience, that experience loses its emotional intensity and rawness. So sights and sounds and smells that used to trigger flashbacks and panic attacks and really strong feelings of anxiety just don't anymore. The memory of their experience isn't gone by any means. Like, Jane would still remember falling off her bike and how her parents reacted, but instead of then feeling flooded with feelings of shame and never wanting to ask for help again, she might notice a quick thought of, yeah, my parents didn't react very fairly and I was just a little kid, and then move on. And the negative meaning and all those physical feelings would be neutralized, and Jane would still be able to believe that she can ask for help and be okay, and that incident wouldn't overshadow all the times that Jane was successful in asking for help. So that memory would finally be filed away with Jane's other 6-year-old memories for her to learn from or reference if needed in the future. So, thank you for hanging in there with me. I hope this was helpful in shedding some light on what EMDR is as a treatment option, and how it actually works alongside the existing healing abilities that the brain and nervous system already have. And I hope if you've been contemplating getting therapy for an annoying issue that just won't go away no matter what you do, or for a bigger trauma that seems to consume all areas of your life, you can make an informed choice about whether or not EMDR feels like an option for you. Because you do have options. You don't have to be stuck. All of the therapists at Hope for the Journey are trained or certified in EMDR, as well as other modalities to help you get unstuck. And if you aren't in Texas and need help, the EMDRIA website is a great place to find EMDR therapists in your area. So check us out at hopeforthejourney.org and take those steps towards healing for good.